So speaking about resources, through the Independent Facilitation Demonstration Project, we were able to create a resource called Weaving a Story of Change, the Independent Facilitation Demonstration Project. This book is available for free download on the OIFN, Ontario Independent Facilitation Network website, oifn.ca. But we want to go into it and delve into a little bit right now with people. So we're going to talk about the 5 main areas of work. First one being developing relationships, and all different kinds of relationships. Maybe you'd like to start speaking to that.
Yeah, so I think as we talked a little bit with the story about Arthur, one of the most important things is to help the individual start having a better relationship with themselves. So we often hear people say, you can't be in a relationship with others if you don't know and love yourself first. And for a lot of the people that we engage with, they haven't reached that place where they can see who they are and what they have to offer and what their gifts are. So it's really an exploration and changing the way they see themselves and the relationship they have with themselves as an individual and what they can contribute. So that's the first relationship that we try and work on with somebody. And then it's also looking at the relationship they have with family. So shifting their role within family and possibly changing the value that they have within family so that that next layer of people in their lives are starting to see them in a different light, shifting perspectives of where their loved one might be able to fit into community, and then looking even more broadly at friends. So a lot of the people that we support, that's one of their main goals is I would love to have more friends, I would love to have more friends. And they're often connected in community, but those connections are rather superficial. So it's creating those acquaintances and those connections into more deeper friendships and real relationships that can offer other opportunities. So I think that that's part of the relationship. And then there's the whole relationship with the system.
Well,
and
that's right, Andrea.
Diane's got a great story.
Well, I just think that relationships matter no matter where we are. And the system, there's lots of in community, agencies and more recently I was at our Developmental Services Ontario office and met with one of the workers or staff there, and she said to me, if only when I finish my assessment I could say, call Facile, let's get going, because what an important piece of work that needs to happen next. No matter what you're asking for, if you don't know what you're asking. But I going back to that relationship piece has been an incredible piece for continuing to nurture our relationship at a systems level, because how important that is for families who know that we're working together, that's it, we're in it together. And that's a pretty strong message as well.
Yeah, and I think also helping families and individuals to develop different relationships with the service providers that they're involved with. Right. So we've had experiences where a young woman has been going to a day program and, for a variety of reasons, that's where she's at. But with a little bit of extra creativity, we've been able to have a worker come and pick her up at her day program, and they actually go out into community twice a week, and they do things that really have value for her. But because of her medical complexity, she really needs some of the supports that are available at the day program as sort of a home base. And then her and her worker can go out in the community and do other things. So that's looking at things a little bit more creatively. Even looking at a respite worker, who might be out and about just spending time. Well, how can you spend that time in a more meaningful way? And how can that individual who's part of the system offer you something a little bit different than what they're offering you right now?
And that's, again, relationship is about building trust, and trust is mutual. And we know that it is a critical piece to all aspects of our work and many levels of that. So I think without relationships, we risk working in isolation as well.
Mm-hmm. So I think what both of you are talking about in terms of the building of different relationships is this idea of valued relationships and reciprocal relationships, that once a person who might be labeled with disability is seen to have value, there's the opportunity for them to contribute, and therefore other people seeing them in a different way. And once we can have a lot of those reciprocal and interdependent relationships, we can really get into the next piece of our work, which is actually creating networks of support. Andrea, do you have any examples of in your work how a network has been established and what it's done for the person's life?
Yeah, actually, one of the families that we're involved with, the young adult, she has some high support needs. So they can be a bit complex. And so for the longest time, her parents kept saying, oh, no, there's no one that could be involved in the network. There's nobody that we could ask. And the facilitator, very gently kept trying to just, approach the subject, from different angles. And then we had a caregiver retreat. And this was an opportunity for us to bring parents together and to have people and families share their experience with independent facilitation. And this mom came and she went home, and on Sunday night before she went to bed, she sent her independent facilitator a long email. Yes, we're having a network meeting. Here's the date and here's a list of people I want invited. And they all said yes.
Wow.
And so they all came to the first network meeting, as well as the young woman, and the facilitator started just going through the process. So tell us about this young woman. What are the things that you love about her? What are the gifts that you see in her? And everybody was blown away. Everybody in the family was blown away at what people saw in her that they couldn't see because they were too close to the situation. They were too close to her. And from there, a lot of different possibilities were identified, and people saying, well, I know somebody who has a golf course and she could maybe work there. And, so all of a sudden, we've got a whole group of people who are looking to solutions.
So what you speak of, Diane, brings us to our next point of, is a huge piece around the work being involved in developing community connections and helping people discover their place in community. I think that people's networks have the opportunity to help bring new ideas to the table, like you described in your story of that young woman's circle, and helping us see the person in a new way, and perhaps figuring out or having other connections to something an interest that someone might have.
Yeah, and I mean, how many times I've heard the moms say, it's weird me picking up the phone and having to call, right? I don't want to do that. I'm the mom, right? Yeah. So it is such a great place for independent facilitators to pick up the phone, right, and to solicit some of those things, right, and the fact that people are just waiting to be asked. I think there is a shift in community. I really do. We see it all the time, and when you expect it, it happens. And we can share lots of stories about lives changed because their life is rooted in everyday life of community.
A lot of our independent facilitators, they never really shut their minds off, so they might be on a weekend or with their family out and about, and they're seeing possibilities. They're meeting friends or they're people in their own network or people in their own community, and they're thinking, oh, okay, so that would be something that so-and-so could do, and that's a connection that, so the facilitators, it's not a 9-to-5 type experience that they have. So they share their networks, independent facilitators share networks with one another. It's all about finding the right people, the right places, and as Diane said, picking up the phone. Let's go and explore. Let's go check it out. Let's do a drive-by and see, is that even something that you would want to check out? And then gradually, going and making those phone calls and meeting those people. And the number of times that an independent facilitator has called an employer or who has called somebody and explained the situation, more often than not, they say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. Let's figure it out. Let's see how we can make it happen. And that is truly, by building on the community connections and just not being afraid to be the one to make that call and to step outside of your comfort zone.
I think independent facilitators also teach that skill to the people that they're involved with. So teaching that to the families, the individual themselves perhaps, and other people perhaps in their network. And in doing so, are really another piece of the work that's happening is we're giving power and information to families to be able to discover possibilities for themselves. It's very important to highlight that we think about community as a first resource, and that we're very intentional about building opportunities that exist within community. Let's look to a little video clip now about other people speaking about community.
One individual I'm working with, I asked what he wanted to do with his life, and he said he wanted to be a stick boy for our 67s hockey team here in Ottawa. It's not our professional team, but it's our junior team. And so I've helped him get connected to not this team that he really wanted, but to a university team here in town. And so he's now one of their assistant trainers.
My name is Megan Lowell, and I'm a mascot cat. Meowed.
I just thought to myself, okay, well, who would benefit from a mascot cat? And so one of the places that's been really great has been the Cat Rescue Network. So Megan's participation there has been very engaging for their events because it draws people to the tables and makes it fun.
And then she came along with Angel. There's a farm there, which is a Hope Heaven, and maybe we can try Isaac there. I love to. And that's where he's enjoying his life. That's his favorite thing. Where are we going today? Horseback riding. Can you say it loud? We're going to horseback riding?
Horseback riding.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few months ago, she helped me she found a place for archery because I like doing archeries and stuff, outdoor stuff. They were very surprised how good I was.
A facilitator is helpful for me to achieve my goals in the long run, for me to get my driver's license, me to move out on my own, little things like that where I'm not sure like what's the best way to go about it. She's going to help me out with it.
My daughter loves to sing, and someone in our network said there's this fantastic new drop-in choir in a bar that meets Tuesday nights, and I love to sing too, and I'm going to go with you. She's there as a singer, not as a person with a disability.
You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. There's some truth to that. It takes a holistic approach to help him or her grow. But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of people.
So what really was a highlight for me was that these clips were all about people not just being in community as an observer, being placed in community, but really belonging in community, that they had a role there, that the facilitator was able to help them create an opportunity where their being in community was meaningful. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Emily made a good point about the creativity around creating some community connections, and it makes me think of a young man that we've been involved with who loves vintage stores and secondhand stores, and also has a gift for keeping things organized. And so in relationship building, him and his facilitator spent quite a bit of time at one specific secondhand store in Ottawa, and the books were always disorganized, and so he would just go in and start kind of organizing them. So the facilitator really took that a step further and approached the management and said, you know, you'd sell books a lot better if you had them a bit more organized, and I've got the guy for you. And so together they created this opportunity, and from there it led also into CDs. So he's now responsible for looking after the books and the CDs, and he has a support worker who helps him with that. And when he first started going, him and his worker would kind of leave their bag and their coats just kind of on the floor next to the book section. And so as the facilitator was checking in on how things were going, she said, well, no, this isn't right. So she again, you know, with him, went and approached the manager and said, you know, where's your staff room and where do your other staff, you know, keep their coats and things? So now he has a hook and he goes and he checks in and he's part of the staff room and he hangs out. And so that was something that they created together. And it wasn't just enough for him to have that role, but it was to get him deeper engaged in that opportunity. So the next step is to look at maybe paid employment. And one of the things that the family are concerned about is how is that going to affect his ODSP. So that's another key role that independent facilitators have, is providing that information about ODSP, about the money that you can earn, about how that works, about how you can help somebody to, you know, access certain resources or certain opportunities without penalizing them in other ways. A lot of our independent facilitators support families to open a registered disability savings plan or help them to get information around wills and estates and Henson's Trust, because that's all part of securing someone's vision and helping them to have the resources in order to implement their goals, either in the short term or the long term.
Planning for the future is so complex. There's so much information that families need to know, whether it's financially thinking about the future, planning for housing, supports, etc., that a facilitator can be really useful in guiding them to find that information and leveraging the supports they have to get what they need in life. And when we speak about planning, I think it's important we really define how independent facilitators view planning, because it might be different than how others see it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think people define it in so many different ways. Families can do it, the observers, all of us have definitions. But in the context of independent facilitation, we see it as being a series of steps, right? And action steps that lead to an everyday life. That when you do things in community and you experience things, that lived experiences is really weaving a story of change, of their story, of their life. And that it's not just one written plan. It's an ebb and flow. It's journeying along beside that family and helping those steps happen. And those are just a series of actions. So planning doesn't change people's lives, the action does.
And it's not sort of a one-time event. It's micro-planning, planning in stages that match where the person's at that moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So just to be clear, could you further define the distinction between person-directed planning and independent facilitation?
So person-directed planning is really a process where an individual, a facilitator, is working with somebody to create a plan. So they may meet a series of times. There's typically a template, and it's really about filling in the template, and you have a written plan. It's a written document, and that is a person-directed planning process, and you get your plan. And when I was doing facilitation, I would often hear families say, but now what? I have no action steps to actually implement that plan. So independent facilitation is really about those action steps. So it's less about what is the written plan, but more about where are we headed, and then let's take the action steps and let's build on the successes that we have along the way. And by doing it that way, you always have your eye on the prize, but the vision is maybe changing as you're learning about yourself and as you're learning about the people and as you're meeting new people in community. Whereas person-directed planning is it's a more methodical process, and it's more about creating a document rather than that journey.
So Andrea, I agree. That is absolutely right, in terms of how we see independent facilitation, and that it's more like micro-planning, one step after another, and it's ongoing.
Absolutely, because if you're not set to one written plan of where you need to go, then you're continuously developing, you're continuously setting new goals and new plans. So it really is that ongoing micro-planning to get to the ultimate end.